Good morning, everybody. We're back for another update on the cosmic weather, the astro weather. Here, the terrestrial weather seems to be turning just a bit, and looks like we've got some precipitation out there in the quote unquote real world. So we're going to break it down here, and hopefully in a efficient, concise 20 to 25 minute chunk of time in your attention. So let's bring up the chart for right now, and we'll get into it. I hope everybody is getting off to a good start with their day. And if you're in another part of the world, I hope your day has been, at the very least, successful and enlightening. All right, so here we go. Sun conjunction with Pluto in Capricorn, and right at the 28th degree, just before the sun moves into the anaretic position tomorrow, where there's nothing left with the Capricornian energy and momentum, and everything is pointed towards Aquarius, right? So tomorrow is almost like a moon void of course. We don't talk much about the void of course moon, but I might be talking about that in future astro weather forecasts here. So there is a great deal of intensity today, without a doubt. I mean, when we get into Capricorn, we're really looking at the world stage. And this is one of those aspects, you know, I was just reading about how there was a helicopter that crashed in Ukraine, and it had their Secretary of the Interior and 18 other high-ranking members inside the Ukrainian government. And to me, this is indicative of a Sun conjunct Pluto moment, where you see and or witness people that are connected to politics, hierarchies and administration die, right? Would it be out of the question if somebody else at that level or even above perished under a Sun-Pluto conjunction? No, I don't think so. I'm certainly not wishing for it, but it would not, well, it depends. I'll put an asterisk with that. And it's YouTube, so I'll have to hold my tongue here a little bit. But this is the kind of energy that's incredibly collective. It's deeply collective. So it's less about what we're going through in some ways and more about what's happening out there. And what's interesting is if we look at the sun as a source of illumination, and it's illuminating Pluto, which is what this conjunction would represent, it also gives us some insight and perhaps a rare case of transparency around what's happening at a much deeper global level. So today and tomorrow should be very interesting days, in days where we might have a small glimmer, a glimpse into what's going on behind the scenes. And then it's off into a new sign and new territory, and that's, you know, in our rear view mirror. But pay attention over the next 24 hours, because we might be able to see something in a very rare occasion and moment, the illumination of that which is occulted. On the other side of things, on a more personal note for people, this Sun-Pluto conjunction gets people to think about and understand where they are in the grand scheme. Like, what are you doing? What's your purpose? What do you have left to accomplish? Is your work vital? Does it need to be transformed? Does it need to be changed? These are really big issues with the Sun-Pluto conjunction as it relates to the big picture. And over the last 24 hours, two videos crossed my path. One was from Stephen Crowder, who some of you might know. I was unaware. I mean, I've known about Steven Crowder for a long time, but I was unaware of the fact that he had close to 6 million subscribers on YouTube. That's pretty significant. And he did a video, it's about a 24-minute video where he's looking at the state of what he's doing as a content creator and some of these contracts that he's been offered. And what's really interesting about remember now we're in collective territory here. And what's interesting about the contracts that he's been offered is the language in said contracts. They're onerous. And these are contracts that were given to him by so-called conservative or alternative media networks that would like to employ him, since he's now a free agent and no longer creates content for the Blaze. And the contracts contained language that was absolutely terrifying, very much like record industry contracts. And that if he signed the contract, they would own everything he does as it relates to social media, likeness, image, for perpetuity. Perpetuity. So it's a really interesting video because, again, it gives us kind of a briefly illuminated glance at the language and the type of deep consent that would lead to somebody ultimately being at a crossroads and compromise, beyond the crossroads, compromise with what they're doing with their work and what they're doing with their life. It's a very interesting video, and it really speaks to this Sun-Pluto conjunction. And what Crowder makes pretty clear is that these networks who appear to be on the quote-unquote right side are doing everything in their power to muzzle people with their message and with their content. It's a very interesting 24-minute video. So this is kind of the energy of the Sun-Pluto conjunction. The other video that crossed my path is somebody who is somewhat popular, but quite a bit less popular than Steven Crowder. And that's Paul Romano, who has a channel called Pockets of the Future. And ironically, he did a video talking about his state of being a content creator, which is very, very different, and the things that go into that process. And kind of an interesting look behind the scenes with the algorithms of YouTube and what YouTube will promote during certain times a year and what they'll throttle other times a year, all based on advertising cycles. So just over the last 24 hours, both of those videos kind of give us an insight into this window where culture is curated, content is curated and created. So that spreads into our own lives, and you don't even have to watch those videos. So we're in the deep here with this Sun-Pluto conjunction. What are you doing? Where are you going? Where are we all going? And the answers to those questions may not be as warm and fuzzy as you'd like them to be. On my show, 15 Minutes of Flame, which will follow this at 9:11 a.m. Central Standard Time, I will get into some of these things and some of the things that I've been looking at over the last 48 hours and coming to some startling conclusions that are not easy to wrap one's arms around. But that's the Sun-Pluto conjunction. You know, if we're not facing the intensity of where we are right now, if we're not really willing to dive into the deep, a lot of people like to use the word shadow. That's an interesting term borrowed from Jungian psychology. But this is more the shadow of the world. This is more the shadow of the ecosystem, the degrading and deconstructing ecosystem, social ecosystem that we're in. This is not a day to turn away from that. And in fact, if you really look at it and go through it, you can find some strength. And where is that? It's right here with a very unusual sextile with Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter in Aries gives us an idea, a sense of courage, moving forward, facing these things and not turning away. It gives us a sense that even in the midst of where we are now, even in the midst of everything that's going on and this kind of raw, naked, darkly illuminated moment in time, Jupiter here says, keep going. Keep going. You may not know where you're going, but keep going. Because when we're in Aries, we're dealing with instinct. We're dealing with the manifestation of will. It is not intellectual. It is based on actional impulse. And today is one of those interesting days, especially as it relates to where you are in the world and whatever you're going through, whatever your experiences, whatever great existential question you're asking yourself. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here? And what is this place? Don't be afraid to go there, because there can be some really interesting benefit, momentum, and reward if you go deeply into it. Today we have Venus getting ever closer to Saturn in Aquarius. Venus-Saturn conjunctions are I think are interesting. They can create new and lasting bonds, and they may not always be sexy, but they serve a purpose and perform a function. And looking towards relationships that have long-term potential and really floating around the friend atmosphere, because that's what Aquarius represents, right? Friends, compatibility. It's not like Libra. It's like, okay, it's you and me against the world, right? It's you and me with the world. And we're finding new meaning, new connection, new possibilities with the potential for long-term circumstances. With Uranus here, it's disruptive. The square is disruptive. So it may disrupt other relationships, other connections that have been long-standing. It's a very interesting time. Things are getting shaken up. And Venus has been in that square with Uranus for a while now. But as it gets closer and closer to Saturn, and we'll see that really begin to come into focus by the end of the week, some of the long-term potential is going to be more on the surface versus the spontaneous disruption of older relationships that have lost meaning and need to take on a new form in some ways. It's a very interesting transit. It's not a comfortable one, but it could lead to new formations of meaningful interaction with other people that you could share a long-term purpose, focus, and goal with. So these are very interesting transits for today. Moon opposite Mars. So we know Mars is moving forward in Gemini, and people are trying to make up for lost time, get a lot of things done. This is what I keep hearing from people. And then on the other side, we have the moon in Sagittarius, which is big and expansive. And like, I really want to stretch out. Remember, I'm talking about this transit just before the moon goes into balsamic phase, where people really want to feel, yeah, I want to bust out. I want to get out of this occulted and dark place that the moon's been in for the last 48 hours. The moon in Sagittarius wants to breathe. It wants to expand. It wants to feel, right? It wants to have fun. It wants to take a big bite out of the apple of life. So Mars on the other side here says, well, you've got things to do. You've got pieces to put together. You've got things that you need to stitched together so that you can get to this place, right? Gemini does um Gemini does dwell in the details. Just like Virgo, they're both ruled by Mercury. So Mars and Gemini could be absolutely detail oriented to the point where it might be obsessive, right? Like we can see a little OCD with Mars and Gemini, and then the opposition here with the Moon makes it tricky. So the idea for today is work, right? Work, get your work done, get all your ducks in a row, put all your details in order, and then go out and try to experience something that would be enjoyable, expansive, opening up your emotional vistas. Go to a bar, have a drink, right? But make sure that you get this Mars and Gemini work done so that you can actually relax and have interesting emotional interactions with people that have been much more expansive than the last 48 hours. And even with the trine with Jupiter and Chiron, I think being social would be a real benefit with this phase, especially before the moon goes dark and it goes into this balsamic phase. So just make sure you take care of business, right? Because you don't want to feel like in the back of your mind, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, which is a hallmark of Mars and Gemini. Got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. Get it done and then relax. And if you're already deeper into your day, finish up your details and put your smoking jacket on and put your slippers on and light up your pipe and kick back and have a glass of, I don't know, sherry or cognac or whatever strikes your fancy. So I think the big thing for today is the Sun-Pluto conjunction and being able to face the darkness. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? And how does it all add up to this big picture? The world, as exemplified by Capricorn. And if you're willing to do that, there's a reward with Jupiter. The reward is courage and moving forward and not faltering on your path. All right, let's talk about the star of the day. Slim pickings today. And I'm not talking about the actor. I'm just talking about people in general who I think, for me, I would find interesting. Let me fix my collar. Is that better? No, not really. So today, our star of the day is none other than Cary Grant. And now we're talking a true star here. Cary Grant is a very interesting character. And he was born Archibald Alexander Leach. Not a very Hollywood sounding name, is it? And he was born in Bath, England, and he has what's called a mid-Atlantic accent. And what's interesting about Cary Grant is that he was an actor at a very early age. He was in vaudeville, and he was into physical comedy, physical acting. That was his thing, right? And while he was in England, he met up with a troupe of American actors. Actually, I think he met them on the ship coming back from England to the United States. So Tallulah Bankhead, Douglas Fairbanks. So he made friends with these people. And they were ultimately influential in his career. Now, we know that he eventually winds up in Los Angeles, but he did a stint in New York, and he was boots on the ground with a lot of early vaudevillians like the Marx Brothers and some of the aforementioned people that I spoke about. What's interesting about his chart is he's a Libra rising, and Cary Grant displays all the qualities of a Libra rising man. You know, ruled by Venus, suave, debonair. You know, whenever you saw Cary Grant, there was rarely a hair out of place, right? And I know it's a Hollywood production, but even in his private life, he was able to convey that sense of being perfectly balanced in a lot of ways. But what's interesting about Cary Grant, and just in general with Libra, Libra isn't always perfectly balanced. Libra is always attempting to find balance, right? Striving to hit that middle point between the two scales. And Cary Grant's life, in many ways, resembles that. And he went through a lot of very intense psychological journeys, let's put it that way. And one of the things that he discovered in the 50s, in the late 50s, was LSD. So we can see Neptune up here in the ninth house. So we know that Neptune represents foreign countries, distant travel, all those things, right? That we associate with the ninth house, higher consciousness, wisdom. And he has Neptune here. What does he do? He takes a ship, crosses the Atlantic, moves to the United States to become what? An actor. And Neptune rules movies and cinema. Not only that, but in the ninth house where Neptune is what we would call accidentally exalted, it also relates to a type of access point to higher consciousness. And this would definitely fit in with Grant's experimentation with LSD, which lasted about a decade and allowed him to come to terms with certain parts of his life. Now, later on, what's interesting is that he would reject that period. And he said that, well, it was a really self-indulgent time where I was trying to cure the ills of an old bore, right? Really interesting and very pragmatically Capricorn in a lot of ways as well. When you read his bio, you can see the new moon in effect. People that are born in a new moon have a lot of experiences. They're here to fill their cup. That's the whole idea with the full moon, the new moon. It's empty. It's you're filling your emotional cup. And being a true Capricorn, of course, Cary Grant fathers a child later in life at the age of 62 with Diane Cannon. And that's right around the time where he turns his back on Hollywood. He's got a Leo midheaven, which of course is always helpful for being on stage and screen. And he had a pretty wide social network as well. We see the true node over here in the 11th house at the 29th degree of Virgo. His daughter remarks that there were always people coming over to the house, and people like Johnny Carson and Frank Sinatra. He and Frank Sinatra were very close. And Frank Sinatra being a Sagittarius and Cary Grant having Venus in the sign of Sagittarius. Jupiter also in Pisces in the 5th house, which again would lend itself to acting and even opening up the doors of perception through the use of LSD. Of course, Jupiter, Pisces being related to drugs, the thinning of the veil, and for Cary Grant expanding his relationship to those things. And of course, we have this Mercury sextile to Jupiter, and I think he found those periods in his time, even though he later went back on them, to be, I think, enlightening for him. And after he took numerous trips, I think one of the earlier ones, he said that it gave me a great deal of appreciation for life that I'd never had in that way, ever, right? So Cary Grant clearly was marked by his relationship with LSD. He's a very interesting character. And also in true Capricorn fashion, he not only had friends, a wide network of friends, but in Virgo, these friends would serve, right? They would have a purpose. And one of his closest friends was Howard Hughes. And he made, through Howard Hughes and a number of his connections in Hollywood, a lot of money. Cary Grant made a shit ton of money. He was a great businessman, aside from being this archetypal leading man. Now, there have always been rumors of homosexuality and bisexuality in Cary Grant's life. he lived with the actor Randolph Scott for 12 years. But this is Hollywood's story, though. So can we see that anywhere in his chart? Yeah. I mean, when you get into Aquarius, whether it's Venus in Aquarius or Mars in Aquarius, you can begin to understand the narrative of choices that are not binary, right? Libra's binary in a lot of ways. Gemini is definitely binary. Although Gemini is not aware of the binary nature, Libra is very aware of the binary nature. But Aquarius is not binary. Aquarius is much more democratic in some ways, right? It's much more progressive in its choice of either identification and or partners, which is why we're starting to see a lot of what's taking place in our culture as Pluto begins to move into Aquarius. So it's not out of the question or that Grant, even with Mars in the fourth house, like living with a man, right? That's male energy. He lived with Randolph Scott for 12 years. Very interesting chart. And I really feel like it's typified by the rising sign and the suave debonair capacity or contour of Libra on the ascendant, right? And then we have, the actor, the consummate actor with Leo on the midheaven. And of course, known for film with Neptune, the highest planet in his chart. Interesting character. And he definitely ranks and rates as the star of the day, literally and figuratively. I do have a show that I do after this, and it's over on my website, and it's called 15 Minutes of Flame. And I want to bring up the graphic here. It's at 9/11 Central Standard Time. I stream for about an hour and a half, and I talk about topics that sometimes are related to astrology. Today, I will definitely weave some astrology into it, but there are topics that don't show up on YouTube. So there's a reason why I have my own channel. And there's a reason why I chose to do this a while ago, because of my seismic relationship with YouTube. Being on, being off, being on, being off. I just wanted to be on. So please join me over on 15 Minutes of Flame. We got a great chat, a great group over there. And I hope to see you 9/11 a.m. All right. Have a blessed day, everyone. This has been your Astro Weather for the 18th of January, 2023. Bye for now.